You're about to listen to Kelly Martin Speaks. I'm your host Kelly, and the author of When Everyone Shines But You, a mental health and self-acceptance blogger and a recovering darkness addict. I have experienced intense anxiety, deep depression and life trauma, but I'm coming out of the other side now. Darkness was a comfort zone for me for a long time, and it felt safer than the light. So in this podcast I share with you my journey into the light and how I move through challenge in an empowering way. I'll share with you tools and nurturing ways to embrace your humanity. I was once a shy, scared introvert, afraid to speak, but that's all changing. Let's take this journey together and learn to fly. Hi there, welcome back to Kelly Martin Speaks. I'm your host Kelly Martin and this is episode 88. Well, I didn't intend to do a podcast episode on the coronavirus because I've already written 2 blog posts on coping with anxiety during a pandemic and also the potential for huge change in the world because of COVID-19. But I realised that sometimes a soothing voice is needed, especially in the middle of a pandemic, and I also thought to myself it would be really important to keep things in perspective and share some ideas or thoughts on how to deal with everything that's happening right now. First of all, I want to say one main thing. If you're scared right now, acknowledge it. Acknowledge it as if the fear were a small child that was scared, needing your support right now. Hold this in your heart. Don't try and get rid of it or push it away. Equally, don't try and cling to it so tightly that it becomes even bigger and impacts you more. I'm saying this because I've done both, and I really understand what you're feeling right now. As someone who is fairly intimate with an experience of anxiety and panic attacks, like many people today, this whole global experience is very triggering for me. And because of this, I've had to be super vigilant in what I'm taking in, how I respond and how I take time out to find the calm inside the inner storm that's happening. So, for example, last night I went to bed. I was pretty calm. I was very sleepy, and as soon as I lay down to sleep, a huge wave of panic came over me. I couldn't breathe. My heart was pounding. I wasn't even thinking about coronavirus. But eventually I realised this wasn't my fear. You may find that if you are super sensitive right now, or an empath, that you're naturally picking up on the growing fear that is gripping the planet, well, gripping most countries. And so what I did was I simply called for backup. You might not be spiritual or religious, but it helps me. So I called on the angels. You may call on God, the goddess, or simply love. Whatever you feel is the most comforting, and I asked for protection from this wave of energy. Because as an empath, I already pick up on so much as it is. And then I turned to face the fear. I could have run, I could have switched my light on and distracted myself by scrolling through the internet or social media. but instead I turned towards it. I repeated a message that I heard on the news recently by a street performer in Italy, when he was asked how he felt about what was happening there. And he simply said, "The situation won't change if you worry or don't worry. I don't worry." It's such a simple message, so I repeated this to myself. Now, anxiety aside, we're all being inundated with news, sources of fear and panic. Mainstream media is being pretty awful right now. It's not encouraging people to maintain calm. It's not simply being informative, but instead it's fueling people into extreme panic. As most of us will have seen, with the panic buying and not being able to buy toilet roll and other essentials, it's becoming commonplace in the Western world especially. So how do we have clarity and perspective when in the middle of this? For example, if we are worried about potential changes to our everyday life, not just health, but limits to our freedom that may occur, changes in our businesses, our finances. Firstly, we recognise that this is temporary. We have compassion for the fear that is arising within us. We remind ourselves that it is natural to be scared and that it's okay. That whatever we feel right now is okay. No human emotion is wrong, ever. Now, how do we get clarity when we are inundated with different sources of information? And many people right now don't know what or who to trust for the truth. For me, I'm choosing, in the United Kingdom, primarily to take in information from the World Health Organization and Public Health England. If you are in other parts of the world, you'll need to find your official sources for support and information. And while the main message is simply good hygiene, washing hands, etc., I do think social distancing, as hard as it can be with the knock-on effects in society, is probably going to be the main way to slow down the virus. The fact is, what is happening worldwide, from all walks of society, be they rich, poor, old, young, no matter who you are, no matter what side of the political arena you stand on, this is all about control. And more so our ability or inability to let go of our need to control. I see governments and people worldwide using terms like going to war on the virus. And well, if you've been following me for long enough, you will know my thoughts on this. Because anything we go to war on simply increases and intensifies. So if we go to war on the virus, if we go to war on poverty, if we go to war on repression, if we go to war on drugs, you name it. Whenever people say they are going to war, it never helps, ever. I think it's far healthier to simply say, this is an unknown virus. This is a deeply uncertain time for many people. This experience is out of our control. So what do you do when things are out of your control? You surrender. And in this case, you surrender to what you feel. You surrender to what you see. You surrender to what is happening and what you need to do to keep yourself safe and as healthy as possible. You surrender to the fragility of the human body and also the strength. You surrender to catching the virus or not catching the virus. You surrender to limits on your freedom. You surrender to potential financial challenges for a time. You surrender to the fear with compassion, acceptance, and love. Surrender's not a bad thing. It doesn't mean you give up. It simply means you accept the nature of this world. That everything changes always. And we never had control. We never had the ability to stop the flow of change. This virus has just come as a wake-up call that we need to do things differently. We need to see our fellow human differently. We need to think about how this virus happened and what practice has brought this about. We need to get clarity on how this virus could be mirroring humanity's war with itself. Like the sun beyond borders, this virus goes, and I think many of us may not realise, every single day we are surrounded by viruses. We have viruses within us being undetected. Our body deals with them and we get on with our lives. And yes, sometimes a virus comes along that is uncontrollable. Doesn't have a vaccine, doesn't have a cure, and life, the human body and the immune system, and the way viruses change as they move forward deals with it. This virus will change. At some point it will lessen. Nothing stays the same forever, and no intensity of experience in life stays intense forever. It's natural for everything to reach a peak and drop off. So for now, all we can do is ride the wave. We ride the wave of anxiety. We ride the wave of the unknown. We ride the wave of health issues that may arise from this. We ride the wave of loss. We embrace uncertainty because COVID-19 is literally encouraging all of us to face fear, to face life, and to make new choices. It is helping us to find new ways to embrace our changing reality. It's not easy, yes, but change never is. It encourages us all to slow down and to recognise our own mortality. And as many people say, the biggest fear there is fear of death. That all fear is a fear of death. Could be the death of the body, the death of the ego, death of identity. And I also think we often fear itself more than anything else. So we can face this by curling up in the corner and hiding completely from the world, or we can feel the fear, face it and embrace it, take steps necessary to support ourselves and our families, prepare, acknowledge, and accept. This is all we can do. We can't control this, but we can surrender. We can have faith and trust in the unfolding. Whatever that unfolding entails for you, it is personal for your life journey. So much love to you and your loved ones during this hugely changing and challenging time on planet Earth. Don't forget to choose life. Even if your life feels limited for a while, find ways to see what is working and what is still beautiful. Focus on the calm that is still there in nature and ride the wave. Thanks for listening to this episode of Kelly Martin Speaks. If you have a question or topic you are struggling with and would like me to answer on an upcoming podcast episode, please get in touch. Your name will be confidential. Email me at kellymartinspeaks@gmail.com or message me on Facebook via my page Kelly Martin Speaks. And don't forget, if you feel that others are passing you by and the not good enough voice is screaming loudly, pop by kellymartin.co.uk to find out all about my books, including Book 1, When Everyone Shines But You. You can also support my channel via my podcast page, on my website kellymartinspeaks.co.uk, via PayPal, or you can even buy me a coffee via Ko-fi. Until next time, bye for now. You've been listening to my podcast, Kelly Martin Speaks. I'd really appreciate your feedback. If you're listening on iTunes, please give me a review. It helps me be seen and heard by those that need it. You can also follow me on kellymartinspeaks.co.uk, where you can read my blogs, find out about my book series, and subscribe to my monthly newsletter. I'm also all over social media, so search for me via Kelly Martin Speaks on Instagram, Facebook and Twitter. I'll speak to you next week. Bye.